And it's actually an important one for every student. That's if everyone here is actually a student. So it's actually an important community to know about. So I'll just be walking you through what the community is all about and what you stand to benefit by joining the community. So, Obed, please can you share my slide?
Yeah, sure. Come on, it is on the way. Okay, a second. Yeah. Please, can you see the slide? Clara,
Yes, I can see it. Thank you.
you are
Thank you.
okay.
Okay, so can you take it to the first part?
Okay.
Okay. Yeah, so what is MLSA? MLSA is the short form for Microsoft Learn Student Ambassador Community. So it's a community for students that is owned by Microsoft. I'm sure everybody in tech, even if non-techies, know what Microsoft is. So next slide, please. Okay, so Microsoft Learn Student Ambassadors. Is that I think you skipped one.
Okay.
Okay, so the Microsoft Learn Student Ambassadors are students. So students in the sense of that you are enrolled in a tertiary institution. So secondary school students can't be part, but once you are in a tertiary institution like university for your undergraduate, postgraduate studies, masters, PhD level, you can become an ambassador. So next slide, please. So formerly, it used to be known as the Microsoft Student Partners, but it's later got rebranded in 2022 to become Microsoft Learn Student Ambassador. So it's an initiative by the Microsoft Corporation, and it was kickstarted in 2001. So initially it was in 15 countries, but now it's like almost everywhere in the world except for some certain countries. But I think almost all African countries are eligible to become Microsoft Learn Student Ambassador Community. So the purpose of this program is actually to improve your employability skills. So that is, as a student, you can become employable even right in school and once you once you have graduated. So most people, when you come out of schools, you hear companies saying they want people with experience. So if you become a Microsoft Learn Student Ambassador, while in school, you can actually gain those experience due to the exposure you get to have. So next slide, please. Okay, so what is the requirement for you to become a Microsoft Learn Student Ambassador? You need to have a passion for learning because you are actually going to be spreading knowledge. That's the basis on which the initiative was started. It is for you as a student to be able to share knowledge to your fellow students. So how will you be able to share knowledge if you don't actually have a passion for learning yourself? So you need to like learning. Also, you have the flair to give back to the society. So what you learn, you also want to teach others. And so so that also leads to you wanting to empower and educate others. And lastly, and most importantly, you need to be a technology enthusiast. So you need to love technology because Microsoft is actually built on technology. Like that's the basis of Microsoft. We are building tech products. So the responsibility for a MLSA is actually building technical communities in your tertiary institution. So you need to actually start up a community. You need to host events and meetups where students get to meet and learn from each other. So you also teach and mentor students. Then you also get involved in projects like hackathons, and there's one, the Microsoft Imagine Cup. So those are your core responsibilities. So next slide, please. So what are the benefits of now being a Microsoft Learn Student Ambassador? So it comes with a lot of benefits actually, and recognition from Microsoft. So you get to have swags. So you see the t-shirts, books, stickers, bottles. Then aside those, you also have premium benefits from Microsoft, like the LinkedIn. You know, LinkedIn is owned by Microsoft, so you get to have LinkedIn premium, LinkedIn Learn premium account. So you get to learn on LinkedIn. You also have access to certain Microsoft certification exams. You also get VSCode subscription. So most people here might not actually know, except you are into tech already. But these are actually things that are like really worthy, like most people crave for people that are already into tech. So aside that, you also get recognition from public speaking because you get to speak at events, collaborate with people, and chance to visit Microsoft Office, and generally a chance to build your portfolio and reputation and credibility in the public. So people get to know that, okay, this person is known for this while you're still a student. So next slide, please. So this is what the Microsoft's package swags look like once you become a MLSC. Next slide, please. So these are actually the stages of being a MLSA. So like Obed introduced himself as an alpha ambassador. So once you get into the Microsoft program, you are first of all new. So you are just at a new level. Then you move on to become alpha. From alpha, you move on to become beta. So I'm currently at the gold stage, and gold stage is the last stage of the MLSA roadmap. So those are the 4 core stages. Next slide, please. So how to get selected to become an ambassador. So by now, if you already know that being an ambassador is a big deal and is one that would actually help your career right from the student's point of view. So for you to get in, it's actually competitive. Most students actually, like most students around the world, are craving for it. So it's for you to get selected, you need to stand out. So next slide, please. Okay, so for you to become an ambassador, so the process has actually changed. In the past, you only need to apply, and once you apply, you get selected. But now there are actually like 2 stages. So the first stage is sending in your application. So this is what the application page looks like. So in subsequent mails that is going to follow this, Obed is going to include the link for you to apply for those that are interested. So this is what the application looks like. So next slide, please. So you will fill in all your details like that. Next slide. Still filling in everything. Next slide. Next slide. Okay, so can you take it back? No, take it back.
Okay.
Okay, so this is like the most important part for you as a prospective MLSA. So yeah, you are going to be asked to fill in some registration questions, and the question is in 3 phases. There's the share, lead, and build. Next slide, please. Next slide. Okay. Okay, so yeah, this no, take it back, please. Yeah, so this is actually very important. So you get to answer 3 questions, and 2 of which are written, and 1 is a video of you talking. So you select the one you are most comfortable with to make the video on. So you can either choose to share. So sharing involves you talking about so they said we are looking for students who follow and share news. So that's like a very important part of MLSA. You get to share some of these resources. Microsoft is always bringing out new products and resources to learn them. So it's actually very important for you to share those things. So yeah, you talk about your 3 top important favorite AI tech influencers on social media. And you could either do a video on that or write on it. So the details of everything is actually there. So share, lead, build. So you need to make your answers like top notch so you can actually get to the next step. So next slide, please. Okay, so one thing Microsoft is also big on is looking at your digital footprint. So they want to see that does this person actually have the potential to become a MLSA. So going through your social media, they get to see what you do in the past, if you have actually been a tech enthusiast like that and what you do. So if you've not actually done anything in tech, like, and it's not out there, you can actually start putting it out there on your LinkedIn, Twitter page. Let people know that this is what you stand for. So next slide, please. Okay, so after that, you actually get a link to join a Discord group. And on the group, you are now told to pick a place that interests you. So you either get to be a community influencer, a community builder, or startup advocate. So influencer involves you spreading the news about Microsoft products. Builder involves you building communities. Then startup is Microsoft has this startup program. So you will either get to be part of that. So next slide, please. Okay, so these are just preliminary things, filling the form accurately, making sure your details are correct and all. So next slide, please. Okay, so I've brushed through this already, what the application form question looks like. So next slide. Okay, so when you're making your video, make sure people can hear what you say. Make sure you record it in a quiet place. You are clear. You don't have any background music or anything that might make them not hear what you are saying. And be passionate about your answer. Don't just give them answer that looks like you took it off the internet. So next slide. And also when you're writing, make sure you exceed the minimum word requirements and make sure you use correct terms and terminologies and don't copy and paste from ChatGPT. Next slide. Okay, so it's basically what I said. So once you have done the video, you just upload it probably on YouTube or on OneDrive or Google Drive. Then you paste the link on the form you're filling. So next slide, please. Okay, I've talked about your social media presence. If you are not using your social media well, you need to start putting out what you do on your social media. Let people know what you are doing. So, okay, I've also talked about this. Next slide. Next slide, please. Okay, so that's it. So that's what the MLSC program is all about. And I really hope you guys apply and would love to see people here on get into the Microsoft Learn Student Ambassador program. So thank you for listening to me, and you can follow me on LinkedIn or Twitter. So my name is Flora Holadpupo. So thank you. Obed, over to you.
Thank you, Flora. Thank you for taking us through the Microsoft Learn Student Ambassador Program. Then I hope that all those here will be willing to join the Microsoft Learn Student Ambassador Program, hopefully by the end of this event. Thank you, Flora, once again. Okay, so let me share my screen. Please, can you see my screen?
Sorry, Obed. Is this being recorded?
Yes, it's still recorded.
Okay, very good.
All right. So now let's get started. So as the title of our event says, we are going to explore clean and prepared data with Python using the Visual Studio Code. And as I've introduced myself earlier, I'm Ubeda Santi, an Alpha Microsoft Learn Student Ambassador, alongside with my co-host Flora, who is a good Microsoft Learn Student Ambassador. Right, so what are the prerequisites for you to have before you can follow us? So you just have to have your Visual Studio Code installed alongside the Python and also the Python extension for Visual Studio Code, Jupyter extension for Visual Studio Code. And I hope by now we all have it since I shared the link via email. So the learning objectives. So at the end of this workshop or this event, I hope that we are going to learn how to find general information about the data that's stored in the pandas data frame, and also learn how to identify and remove duplicate values from a data frame. Learn how to replace or remove null values in data frame, and also learn ways to visually explore the data that is stored in the pandas data frame. So our agenda, so I'm going to look at the data frame, how to explore data frame, working with missing data, remove duplicate data, and also to visualize our data. So let's say you want to perform analysis on a data set that you find very interesting. So you can think of any data set that you want to do some analysis on. So like the population of people in a certain geographical area or various types of cars. So you can see that with this type of data set, it can be very huge. The population of people, you can see that in a geographical area, we have more than 50,000 people. If we take Accra in Ghana, for instance, you can see Accra is very populated. They're trying to find or trying to do analysis on this type of data. You just don't need any tool, but Python is going to make the work easier for you. And also the various types of cars and any data set you could think of. So the first thing you will need to do with any data set is to clean it up. In data analysis, in data analytics, we assume that any data set that you pick might be dirty or might be messy. So if we say a data is messy, doesn't mean that it is full of dust or anything, but it's messy in the sense that it has missing values or maybe some records are being duplicated. So it is your duty as a data analyst to make sure that this data set is free from these missing values or duplicated values in order to make sure that your analysis is very clean or is on point. So in this workshop, you will learn how to use the data science libraries like Pandas, NumPy, Matplotlib, and Seaborn to prepare your data for analysis and visualization. So now let's go to exploring data frame information. So before you can get your data set into Python, you have to use a library called Pandas. And this Pandas, it is a library which is used for data analysis. So let's say, for instance, you are going to look at a data set which is very huge. It has over 60,000 rows and 400 columns. How do you even begin to get a sense of what you're working with? Because you can't just take the data set and start going through the records one after the other. By the time you finish, you could have used even a month or a week to look at all the data set that you are going to work on. But fortunately for us, we have the Pandas library, which provides some convenient tools to help us to quickly look at overall information about a data frame. Okay, so now let's move on to the next agenda, working with missing data. So we assume that most of the data sets that we find out there will be one way or the other, some inconsistency in the records. Maybe someone may not complete the survey, or maybe there could be errors. Maybe the person was inputting or entering the data and the person missed a step. So it is your duty as a data analyst to go through these data sets and to ensure that the data set you are going to work with is free from missing values, right? Some of these occurrences could be data entry errors, incomplete surveys, and data loss. All right. So in Python, right? So if you have a data set, how do you find out that this data is having missing values or is not having a missing value? That is when the is now or not now methods comes in to help us to detect missing values. So with this is now or not now, it works with the pandas library very much, or it works with data frames, which help us to identify missing values in our data set. So what are the key takeaways? So the key takeaways of this to detect null values, both the is now and not now methods produce similar results when you use them in data frames. And we are going to look at that in the practical section. So after finding your missing values, you have to either, so there are two ways of doing this, right? So it's either you fill them up, right? Or you drop them. But if you are dropping them, always know that you are dropping them, you're going to drop them. If you drop a record or if you drop a value, it might give you issues at the end because you might drop a record that may just miss one column. But let's say, for instance, all the columns for that row has no missing values. Sorry, has missing values. It means that you can drop that record without having interfering your analysis. So as I said, so to fill a null values, there are kind of three ways, right? So you have to use the forward fill, the back fill, and also to fill them with mean, mode, or median, right? Based on the type of data you are dealing with. Yes, so looking at this on our screen, so they say what happens if you try to fill null values with a string like this, right? So with this, you can see that our data, the A has 1, B, there is nothing there. The C, there is a 2, then D, there is no value, and E, there is a 3. So to fill this type of data, if you want to drop them, you can drop them. But if you think that you want to use the forward fill, and also for the forward fill, this is how it works, right? So it is going to pick the number after the missing value, and it's going to fill the B. So for instance, in our case, you can see the B is missing, right? So if you use the ffill method, the fill now method is equal to ffill. It's going to fix N2 at the B column, right? Sorry, yes, at the B column. Then the D is going to fill in with 3. That is how the ffill works. That is the forward fill. Yeah, so you can see this one. So with this is a backfill. So it picks the previous value before the missing value and fills it in. Right, so they take away from this agenda. So there are multiple ways to deal with missing values in your data set. The specific strategy you use, that is removing them, replacing them, or even how you even replace them should be detected by the particulars of that data, as I said earlier on. You have to develop a better sense of how to deal with missing values the more you handle and interact with data sets. So now let's move on to the next one, that is to remove duplicate data. So in removing duplicate data, in addition to missing data, in real world data sets, you frequently encounter duplicated values, right? We all know that data entry, there is someone behind the PC who is doing the data entry. Then there is one way or the other whereby he might do a mistake of trying to enter someone's record or trying to do a record twice, right? And that may lead to duplicate data. And this may also cause you, when you are trying to do your analysis, you may provide incorrect analysis, right? So that's why it is very important to check whether your data set is having duplicates. And also to identify duplicate data, we use the duplicated method, right? Alongside the pandas. You can easily spot duplicate values using the duplicated method in pandas. Then I'm going to look at that in the practical section. So okay. So data visualization, right? So data visualization is the process of converting data into a visual format, such as charts, graph, and this can make it easy to understand the data and identify patterns and trends. So as a data analyst or as a data scientist, you may understand what you're working with. You can understand the back end or the code that you're dealing with, but someone who doesn't have any idea of what you are doing, it is very important that you use visuals, right, to communicate what you are doing or to communicate your insights. And Python makes provisions for this. And these libraries are going to help us to do this visualization. That is Matplot, Seaborn, Plotly, and bouquets. But for this section, we are going to make use of matplot and seaborn. Types of data visualization. There are different types of data visualization as we can think of. And each type of data visualization, we use them based on what we want to visualize. We just can't get up and just pick any data, any type of visualization and just put any information out there. No. Every type of data visualization has its own strength and weakness, right? So we know that for bar charts, we used to check the occurrence of categorical data and stuff. But for line charts, it's used to check the trends, right? Then the scatter plots, it's also used to check relationship between two variables, and histogram too. Then the heat map. So the heat map also is also used to check relationship, but with this, it works mostly when you're trying to find for the correlation between a variable. And also the box plot. The box plot, it is used to check outliers, right? The mean, the median, and the mode of our data sets. Okay, right. So at the end of this, I hope that by the end of this workshop, you are going to have a deeper understanding of how to use Python to clean, explore, and prepare your data using the Visual Studio Code. And also, you can also learn more with these Microsoft Learn models, of which I will share with you after the event via email. So we can start with the practical section. But before then, please, any question? Yeah, Stephen, you can go ahead.
Okay, thank you for at least the wonderful presentation. I want to ask,
Yeah.
in the no data like that, especially missing data, is it that
Yeah.
we are supposed to be the one to do the to find the mean value to now insert there, or the probably the app, this VS Code app will be the one to do all that? Ours is just to enter the data that we have.
Okay, so thank you, right? So for the mean, right? So if you want to replace the missing values with the mean, it is your duty as a data analyst to use the Python, right? So with Python, we have a library called pandas, and the pandas is going to help us to use the mean to replace our missing values. Don't worry, I'm going to do a practical session about that, and you get a deeper understanding, right?
Okay.
Hope you're okay.
Yes, thank you.
You're welcome. Yes. Please, any other? Okay, so please, can you see my screen?
Yes, please.
Okay, all right. All right, so we are going to use the Visual Studio Code. The Visual Studio Code is a product from Microsoft, which stands for the Visual Studio, the Visual Studio Code, yeah. So if you open the Visual Studio Code, you should have an interface like this, the welcome page. So the first thing that we are going to do is to go to our view, right? The view tab. Since we are going to be working with the data science environment, that's with the Jupyter Notes environment. So we'll click on the view, click on the command palette, or you can use the Ctrl+Shift+P. So when you click that, you should have something like this. So what we are going to do is to create a new Jupyter notebook. So you can just search in Jupyter notebook, right? Jupyter notebook. Then you see create new Jupyter notebook. So if you click on that, you should have something like this. Have something like this, right? Okay. Okay, so now let's get our data sets ready. So as I said sent in the email. I said we should have our data sets in a folder. Right, so we are going to open that folder. So this is my folder here. Okay. Okay, so okay. So we are going to have, please, can you see my screen?
Yes, okay.
Okay, all right. So we are going to create a new Jupyter notebook file. Then I'm going to give it a name, maybe mlsa.ipynb. So that is the file extension for Jupyter notebook files. So we are going to create one. Let's save, right. So before we get started, we are going to be importing our libraries. As I said, the Python. So Python makes provisions for us to use its inbuilt libraries to perform analysis on data sets. So the first library that we are going to be making good use of is pandas, right? So let me comment this, importing libraries. So we are going to import pandas, right? So the reason why I'm importing pandas is because pandas is already in Python memory. So we are going to import it onto our Jupyter workspace, right? So we are calling pandas from Python memory so that we can use the library for our analysis. So the first thing I'm going to do is to import pandas as what? PD. So import pandas as PD means that we are going to import pandas, but we want to give it a nickname, or as you can say, maybe an acronym. So every time we want to use pandas, we just say PD instead of pandas. We're also going to make use of matplotlib as PLT. We're going to import Seaborn as SNS, import NP. Okay. So these are the libraries that we are going to be using for our analysis today. So we should select, okay, so Anaconda, yes. It will take some time to activate, right? Okay. Okay, now it is activated. So you can run the first cell. So to run the cell, we use either Shift Enter or Control Enter. So for the Shift Enter, it runs the cell and bring a new line. But for the Control Enter, it just runs the cell without bringing in a new line to enter a code. So I'm going to be making use of the Shift Enter since I'm going to be using most of the lines, right? Okay, so after importing our libraries, we are going to bring our data sets into the workspace. So we are going to give it a variable. So in my case, I'm going to name it df. So df is equal to pd. As I said, pd is pandas. So pandas makes provisions for us to read a data set. So the data set can be in any format. So we are going to say pd.read. So if we enter pd.read, it's going to give you options. Which type of data set or which type of file extension are you going to read? Are you going to read from a clipboard? Are you going to read from a CSV? That's a command separated value. Are you going to read Excel file, FEDA, FWF, and whatsoever? You can read so many data with the pandas data frame. Okay, but we are going to use a CSV since our data set is in the CSV format. So CSV. So since our Jupyter notebook file is in the same folder with the data set, we'll just go straight for it. to say employee attrition, then you should have it there. But if, for instance, your data set is in a different location, okay, if your data set is in a different location and your Jupyter Notebook file is also in a different location, you have to import OS and read and change your directory to that directory whereby your data set is, right? So I'm coming. So a second, let me share my whole screen. Okay. Right. So if, for instance, your data set is in a different location and your workbook, that's the Jupyter Notebook file, is also in a different location, we are going to use a library called OS, or you can just go straight forward and go to the directory where your file is, right? So let's say, for instance, my Jupyter Notebook file is in a different location and my Jupyter Notebook file is here. So what we can do is to right click on the folder where our data set is and click on properties, or you can just click on copy as path. So you click copy as path and you come back to your working area and paste the path. You can paste the path here. So if you paste the path here, what you have to do is that you have to change the slash. Since Python reads with the /, you have to change it to a /. Right now, you type in the data employee attrition .csv. So with this, it will still read, right? But it is more advisable that your working Jupyter Notebook file is in the same folder with the data set, so that it will be easy for you to transfer this folder to someone else, so the person can also have a look at your work. But if you just export the Jupyter Notebook file, the person might not have access to the data set. Okay, then there is a different way of doing this. You can just do import OS. Right, so after importing OS, you can come and change your directory. So we are going to say os.change directory. So which directory do you want to change into? You want to change into the directory that we used, the part that our data set is in, right? We just paste it. Yeah. So let me comment this. So now after changing the directory to the place that your data set is, let me take this one to out. Okay. So after changing the directory, you have to now read. So now you can now read without the directory. You can just call the data set. So we just say df is equal to pd.read underscore csv. Then the name of our data set, employee attrition .csv. Okay. Now we run. Yeah, so now our data set is now in our Jupyter workspace. So if you want to view your data set, you can just call the variable. Since we have assigned our data set to the variable df, you can just call df. And to print out an overview of how our data set looks like. And this is an employee attrition data set. So now we can now look at the first 5 records of our data set and the last 5 records of our data set. And how do we do that? We can just use df.head. So the head, so by default, the head prints out the first 5 rows in our data set. But if you want to print out the first 10 rows, you can just input 10, right? You can just input 10 into the parentheses now to print out the first 10 rows. And note, Python is a zero index programming language, which means that it starts counting from 0. So the first record will be labeled as 0, and the second 1, 2, 3, 4, so on and so forth. right? So now let's do that to view the last 10 records of our data set. So we say df.tail. Since we have head, we should have what? Tail. So df.tail, then 10. We pass in the number 10. Then this prints out the last 10 rows of our data sets. Okay. Yeah, so what we are doing now is we are exploring our data sets. We want to know how our data set looks like. Okay. So now the other thing we can look at is we want to know the number of rows and the number of columns that we are working with. So the shape method or shape attribute is going to help us to do that. We will say df.shape. Then we run. Then this will give us the number of rows and the number of columns we are dealing with. So the first value there is the rows, and the second one is 10. So it means that we are dealing with 15,787 rows, 10 columns. Okay. So having this type of data sets, you trying to sit down to go through one after the other to check whether the data set is in order or maybe it is accurate. It's going to be time consuming, but Python makes provision for us to use the pandas library to do that with very easy methods. Okay. So now after looking at the shape, we can also look at the info of our data set. We say df.info, and this will give us an info or an overview of how our data set looks like. Right, so you can see that the column, so this is the column, employee ID, satisfaction level, the last evaluation, number of projects, and so on, right? So this also gives us the data type in each of the column. So for the employee ID, it has the data type float, satisfaction level, data type of float, and also the number of projects to float. Then it's only the department and salary that has what? An object data type. And the object data type is more or less like a string. Okay. So now we can also look at the summary. Okay. The summary of our data set. So we can also look at how our data set looks like. You can say describe. I want to describe our data set. It means that was the priority tenses. Okay. So the describe gives us a total summary. So to give us an overview, that is the count. So it's going to count the number of records in our data sets. And the count, we will just look at rows that has values in them. It's going to count all those rows that has values in them. And also find their mean, the standard deviation, the minimum value of each row, and also the 25 percentile, the 50 percentile, 75 percentile, and also the maximum value of each row. Okay, sorry, of each column rather. Okay. So now after looking at this, what next can we do? We can also look that we also want to check the type of data that is in each column so that we can know that, oh, so with this column we are dealing with this type of data, and also for the next column we are dealing with this type of data. So to do that, we can use the DFD types. Okay, sorry. DFD types, and this gives us the type of data for each column. Okay, so for the employee ID, it has a data type of float. And also looking at this data set, you can see that we are working with employee attrition. And this employee attrition is a data set which was collected from employees in an organization to know how like to track their performance. Okay, so to track their performance in the organization over the past few years. Okay, so with this, you can see that there is no way that an employee ID should have a float data type, right? So it's trying to tell us that there are some ID that has 1.0, 1.2, and those stuff. Okay, so this is inappropriate. So it is our duty as data analysts to make sure that the data that we are dealing with is accurate or it is consistent. Okay, so we are going to change the data types of the columns that we think that, so with this column, the data type of float is not appropriate, or this type of data is not appropriate. So we should use a different data type. So with that, we are going to use the method called as type. So the as type helps us to change the data types of of a column to a different data type. So for instance, let's say the employee ID, we assume that there's no way that an employee ID should have a float data type. We are going to change the type to an integer. That's a whole number. So we are going to say df employee ID dot as type. So we want to change the type. So we want to change it to what? We want to change it to an integer. Okay, now let's run. Oh, sorry. Oh, I've missed out some. Okay, So you see, the error here is telling us that cannot convert non-finite values to integer. So this is telling us that there are some missing values in our data set. And with that, we can't change that column to an integer. So this is where our skills, or the skills that we have as a data analyst, comes in. We have to now look at the missing values, take them out, or either fill them with the mean, or the forward fill, the back fill, the mode, or the median. So now we can look at the missing values in our data set. So we can say df dot is now. So it's now. So this means that pandas or Python check through my data set, check whether this row, so to go through all the rows, right, and see whether this row is having a missing value. So if the row has a missing value, it will return true. If it doesn't have a missing value, it will return false. So let's run this. So you can see that we have false, 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 false. But since the data is many, we can't view everything. There are some true values in it. So how do we check for? So how do we know that, oh, this is the total number of missing values in our data set? We are going to use the sum. So df dot is now, or is missing, dot sum. So sum up all the missing values in our data set. So you see that has given us 788. So one may be asking, why is it that it has counted the missing values and given us the number? Note that booleans, right? So booleans in Python, the booleans, the false represents 0 and true represents 1. So for instance, if we say true, so true plus true plus true should give us what? 2. This should tell you that true represents 1. So 1 plus 1 is 2. So now let's say true plus false. Sorry, capital F. True plus false is 1 because false represents what? 0. Please, are we getting it? Hello.
Yeah.
Okay, all right. Please, can I proceed?
Yeah.
Okay, all right. So moving forward. So after checking for our missing values and knowing the number of missing values in our data set, so you can see that for all our columns, there is 788 missing values in our data sets. Okay, so for employee ID, 788. So it means that it runs through all the columns. Then with this, we can't use the backfill or the forward fill, since we might be doing a wrong analysis. But you can see that all the rows for these columns are missing. So there is no value for each. Like let's say, for instance, maybe here there are maybe two missing values. Maybe here is 3, 4, 5. Like it varies, like different number. That is when we are going to take it one to analyze that. Oh, maybe with this, the person just missed out one value in this. Maybe that's when I'm going to use the mean, the median, or the mode, or the forward or backfill. But with this, everything is empty. 788 rows are empty. So how best do we do that? So we are going to remove these data sets so that we are going to remove these rows to be able to proceed with our analysis. So we are going to use the method called drop now. So df drop now, that is, we are going to drop any number which is not available. Okay. Then we are going to pass in the parameter in place. So we are saying that pandas or Python drop all the missing values. Okay, so drop all the missing values, and it should take what? It should take place. It should take effect. Okay, so we are saying that pandas drop all the missing values and make sure that these missing values that you are dropping, it should also affect the main data set that we are dealing with. So that is the meaning of the true, in place true. So now it has taken effect. So now let's check whether it has really taken effect. We say df.isNow.sum. Let's run. So you see, now all our missing values are gone, or all our missing values have been dropped successfully. So now we can go ahead with our analysis, okay? So we can even check for duplicate values as well. So the duplicate values, we can also check df.duplicated, right? Duplicated. So you see we have false, 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 false. So how do we do this? We can also use the sum method to check for the number of truths in the rows. So this will check for the columns, right? The columns, or sorry, the rows that has been duplicated in our data set. So we just pick row 1 and compare it with all the rows. So if row 1 has a duplicate somewhere, which will return what? True or false, true or false. So the true means that this row has been duplicated. The false means that this row has not been duplicated. Okay, so we can see here that our data set has no duplicate values. So we can go ahead with our analysis now. Okay. So as I was saying earlier on, we wanted to change the data types of some columns. So we can now proceed with that. So we can say df. So which column do we want to change its data type? That is the employee ID. Since we assume that employee ID shouldn't have a data type of a float, but rather an integer. So we can change it. But before changing it, we have to make sure that we pass the employee ID column first before we give it the changes that we want to do. So we say employee ID column is equal to the old employee ID column dot as type. So we want to change the type as, okay, we want to change the type as an integer, okay. So we want to change the type as an integer. Now we run. So it has now taken effect. So you can now check for it. So df dot employee ID, and it should give us an integer. So you see the first one, we're having decimal numbers 1.0, 2.0, 3.0, and so on. But now, so we can also look at our data set and look at the columns that we think that we can change the. So df.d types. So you see that now the employee ID has been changed to an integer. So you can also look at other columns that you think that we can also change them to a different data type. So going through satisfaction level, yes, maybe the satisfaction level was rated out of 10. Maybe some people, their satisfaction level was maybe 3.5, 2.5, and so on. But for number of projects, do you think that there is a way that somebody can say he has worked on 2.3 number of projects, 1.3 number of projects? No. So that means that with that one too, it's having a question mark on each data type. So we have to change it to. And also time spent in the company. Time spent in the company, I don't know how they did their data entry, but with this one, if it was based on maybe based on months, right? So you say 12 months. So if the person say 3.2, it means that 3 months, 2 weeks, or 3 months, 2 weeks, or anything. But for number of projects, you can see that with this, it has a question mark. Okay, so it's our duty to also change that one too. You can say df dot number of projects is equal to df number of projects dot change the type. Okay, to int. We want to change the type as an integer. Now we run. Perfect. So now it has taken effect as well. So now we can now do our analysis. Okay. So as we were trying to do before, it was giving us an error that cannot convert non-finite values. So now, after we have taken out all the missing values, we can now perform any method or any operation that we want to perform on these data sets now to run successfully. Okay, so now this is an overview of how to explore. So now we are just exploring our data set and cleaning it. So we have taken out all the missing values. We have checked for duplicates. Okay, so now we can now look at some analysis. Now let's explore more into our data set. So maybe you can just check some unique values in some columns. So we can pick the department, for instance. So we want to know the department in the company. So you can say df, then department dot unique, right? Yeah, so now what this code means that it's going to check for unique values, right? Unique values in the department column and return out the output. So to pick the column and check, oh, whether is there any value, right? Or is there any item in this column that is only maybe like, so to pick all the values that have been duplicated as one and return it to us. So let's say for sales, for instance, let's say there are so many employees that are under the sales department. We should pick all the sales in that column and return it as one value, that is sales, accounting, HR, technical, support, management, IT, projects, marketing and research and development. So this is the function of the unique method. Okay, so now let's look at other methods with. So we can also check for value count. So we can also count the number of each department. So we are going to use df index department, then value count. So we are going to count the values of each department in the column of departments. Okay, so sales. So there are 4,140 employees under the sales department. Technical, 2,720 employees under the technical department. Okay, so this is how the methods works when you use them. So it's based on what you are looking for. So for this one, we're looking for the number of employees under each department. So that's when we use the value count. So we can also perform other operations with it. So we can say we want to use a group by. So the group by, what it does is that it's going to group an item based on a criteria. Okay, so let's say for instance, we want to group departments. Okay, we want to group departments based on salary. Okay, so you want to group departments based on salary. Then dot count. So you want to count it. Okay. Okay. So with this, what it has returned is that IT, right? So they are all, so okay, it's like it's the same thing as the first one. Okay, let me do it for. So let's use a different one. So salary, then department, right? Okay, yes. So high, 123, so 1,237. Then for the low, 7,371, and median, 6,460. Sorry, 6,446. So what this means is that it has picked a salary column and look for any unique value in it and count all the departments. Okay, so to group all the employees and count them. So okay, there are 1,237 employees whose salaries are very high and 7,316 employees whose salaries are very low. and 6,446 employees whose salaries are in the middle or the medium range. Okay, so this is how the group by works. So we are going to group something based on something. Okay. So now, after looking at all this, right, so we can look at other information in our data set. So let's say, for instance, we want to view employee ID. We want to view employee ID who fall in the HR division. Okay, so we can say DF employee ID, right? Say DF employee ID so we will say department is equal to, so we are looking for what? HR. Okay, so HR, so all those who fall under the HR. Okay, there is something. Okay, so I've missed out something here. Oops, department, the spelling. Okay, that's it. Okay. Oh, false. Why is this? Okay. Item on one missing of. Oops. Oops. Why? What's happening? Okay. No, it seems like I'm missing out the code. Okay, so department. Okay. All right, so DF department. So we are looking for all the departments whose so now we're going to look at all the employees that falls under the HR division. Okay, so we are going to be using, please a minute. Okay. So, okay. Okay, so now let's look at this first before we move on to that one. So with this, we are looking at 2 columns at a time. So to look at 2 columns at a time, we use the double square bracket. So this time we're just printing all the columns, that's all the records that falls under department and the employee ID columns. Okay, so now let's move on to looking at further analysis. So we can now move on to visualizing our data sets. Okay, so to visualize our data, we are going to be making good use of the matplot, the seaborn. Okay, so to look at that, so we are going to look at what we want to visualize before we use any type of chart. Okay, so now for instance, let's say we want to know the highest number, okay, the highest number of employees in a particular department. So we are going to be using the bar chart. So since the bar chart, that one shows a kind of distribution between variables. So we are going to make use of the bar chart. So we are going to say PLT dot bar, right? So PLT dot bar. So this means that we are using the matplot library, then the bar charts. But before we move to that, we have to make sure that we pick the X and Y value. So seeing that the bar chart, it uses the X and Y value when plotting. So we are going to use a library, or you can use a library called collection. Okay, so from collection, import counter. Okay. From collection, yeah. Okay. So from collection, import counter. So the counter is going to help us to make a column as a dictionary, so we can use its key and its value to plot our data sets. Okay, so for instance, we want to use the departments column. So df.department. Okay. So we want to plot this column, but you can see that the sales has been repeated. Okay, it has been repeated. So we want to count all the sales as one, the support as one, all the department as one, so we can get the total number. Okay, so we can assign it to a variable. So let's say for the sake of this tutorial, we are going to say maybe dr. So dr is equal to dict into brackets counter. So now what type of which column do we want to make a dictionary? We want to make the department a dictionary. So we pass in the department column. Now we run. So if we run the variable dr, we are going to see that our sales has been counted. So all the sales in that column has been counted as one, accounting as one, HR as one. So now we can now plot this. But before plotting, we can just assign the sales, the accounting, the HR, technical, and stuff. So you know that those ones are the keys, and the 4,000, the numbers allocated to it are the values. So we can say x is equal to dr.keys. Okay. Then we pass in for y. So y is equal to dr.values. Now we pass in that. Now we can now come back to our plot and say plt.bar is equal, then bracket. So the bar, it takes in argument. So the argument it takes is the first. So the first argument it takes is the values that are going to be on the x-axis. That is x. So since we want the names of the department should be on the x-axis, we are going to make sure that the x here comes first, and the values, that is y. Now we move on to the next one. So plt dot. So now after getting the data that we want to plot, maybe let's say we want to give it a title. Okay, so you can say plt dot title, then give it a name. So distribution of employees in the company or in each department. Okay, so now the next one that we can do, we can also look out is plt dot show. Now we want to show our data, okay, or our graph. So with this, it has given us the image or the distribution of employees in each department. But looking at this, you can see that the values or the names of each department has been mixed up. Okay, it has been, how like I say, so I would say it has been overlap. Yes, so overlap. I think overlap is the right way to use. So then the words of each department are on each other. So for us to make sure that the words are visible, we can use, or we can rotate these values. We can rotate these words so that it can be more appealing, or it can be more seen by people who have interest in this analysis. So you can say plt.xtext, right? So the x text, so the x means that the x-axis, and the text, you see the line, this. So we want to rotate the word, okay, the value or the word under each tick. So we are going to say plt.xtext rotation is equal to 90 degrees. Okay. So with this, it has been rotated to 90 degrees. So for each value of, so for each word, it has been rotated to 90 degrees. So it can be more seen. So let's say, for instance, maybe the color that we are dealing with, we don't like the color. We can change the color too. So we can pass in color. Color is equal to, so maybe we can give it green. Okay, green. So with this, we have changed the color of our data, or the color of our graph. We can also label label our x-axis to, we can say plt.x label. So we can say maybe department. Then plt, we want to label our y2 as well. So plt.y label. So we can say number of employees, okay? Number of employees. Now let's run this. So you can see that the number of employees is shown here, then department is also shown here. But let's say, for instance, maybe the color you think that it's the same as what is on the white text, we can also change its color to as well. So you can say color is equal to, maybe you can give it a blue. So that one you can use the B. Then here to color is equal to a blue. And let's run this. So you can see that this has been changed to blue. The department name has also been changed to blue. So these are some visualization that we can do with our data sets based on what we wanted. But with this, we wanted to know the distribution of employees in each department in the company. Okay. And let's say, for instance, we want to know some kind of correlation, okay, correlation between two variables or two columns in our data sets. We are going to make use of a chart called heat map. Okay, the heat map. So the heat map, what it does is that it will give you an overview, okay, an overview of how variables relate with each other. So with that one, we are going to be using the Seaborn, okay, so Seaborn, so cns.sns.c heat map. Yeah, okay, so now the first thing, so the first parameter or argument that this takes is what type of mathematical operation or what type of mathematical thing do you want to do with the heat map? In our case, we want to know the correlation. So we'll say df.correct. That's the short form for correlation. Then the color of the map, right? The color of the map. So the color, we say red. We want yellow, and we want green. What this means is that it's from the lowest to the highest, okay? So the red means that the variables are not correct, like the variables are negatively related. The yellow somehow related, and the green, it means that they have a strong positive relation, okay? So after passing this, we can also say we want to make sure that the numbers are visible. That's the annotation. So an annotation is equal to true, okay? Now we can now show our heat map. Perfect. So you can see that the heat map is now showing, as I said earlier on, that the colors. So the red stands for negative correlation. The yellow, they are relating, but you can see that it is positive, but not too strong. But the green means that they have a strong correlation, as it is shown here. So from the red, yellow, and green. So the more it goes up, the more the color changes. So this is how to use the heat map. We can also have a look at scatter plots, right? Since the scatter plot is used to find correlation of, it's used to find relationship between variables. So with that one too, we can also say PLT, that's matplot. So matplot plots a scatter diagram. Wait, so for instance, we want to use the satisfaction level. So say satisfaction level. So satisfaction level. And also, we also want to plot the last evaluation. So we want to know the relationship between the satisfaction level and the last evaluation in the company. Then we can also run it and see how it's going to look like. So plt.show satisfaction level means that I wrongly spelled it. Satisfaction, PAT. Right. Okay. So you can see how clumsy or how packed the graph is. You can see that the relationship is very packed because of the number of records that we are dealing with. So you can see that it's having some kind of relationship, a very strong relationship, but just that it's very packed. Okay, so this is how to use the scatter plot in Matplotlib. Okay, so we can also have a look at histogram. Okay, histogram. So the histogram also shows distribution in a data set, but with that one, it deals with bins. Okay, the bins means that the number of graph or the number of representation that you want to show. So let's say, for instance, we want to plot, so let's pick any column. So let me bring out the columns names again. So we have employee ID, satisfaction level, last evaluation, number of projects, average monthly hours, time spent in the company, work accident. So let's say, for instance, we want to plot a histogram of maybe work accident. Okay, work accident. But with that one, since it is not a categorical data, it might not make sense. Okay, so let's say you want to plot a histogram of salary. Since that one is a categorical data, so we can say plt.hist. That is the short form of histogram. So hist. So which data do you want to plot? We want to plot at salary. So we say salary. So now, as I said, the bins. So we say bins is equal to 20 or any number. Okay. So if you want maybe 5 or 3. So since the salary, it has 3 variables, that's the high, medium, and low, we can just use 3 bins. Now plt.show. Perfect. So you can see that the low has the highest number of employees that has a very low salary. The medium, second highest, and the high, very low employees. So this means that the employees, is very few of them that have a very low salary. That have a very high salary. Then the people that have a very low salary are around 7,000. Then we have the medium salary earners, which is kind of above 6,000, but not close to 7,000. Okay. So maybe if we want to label our chart, we can use plt.label. We want to label the x-axis. So x label. So we say salary. Okay. Salary. Then plt.y label. We say maybe you can give it a name of count. Okay, count. Then the title, we have to pass it a title. So plt.title. You say distribution of salary. Okay, distribution of salary. Now let's run this. Yes, as you can see, you can see the count, the salary, and the distribution of salary. So what we are doing is just visualizing our data sets. Okay, we are trying to draw insights from our data sets that we have. So we have looked at how to look at the data, how to remove missing values, how to also take out duplicate values. But in our case, we didn't have any duplicate value. So it was easy for us to continue with the other analysis. Then we also looked at how to visualize the data using the bar charts, the heat map, the scatter plot, and also the histogram. So please, at this point, any question? Please, any question? Hello.
Hello.
Yeah, please, any questions at this point? Yeah, hello.
Obed,
Yeah.
thank you again for the training. You've been using some codes and terms like that. I don't know whether you can, at what point do we use them, like you're saying df, count, read, and all those things. And even when you write count, you just open brackets, there's nothing inside it. And so maybe if you can just put us through on all those terms or codes like that.
Okay, okay, all right. Yeah, so I can see a different hand up. Jemima. Jemima, yeah, sorry, Jemima. Jemima, please, yeah, on mute. On mute and talk. Okay, so it seems okay. Right. So Stephen, you are talking about me using hello. Okay. All right. So Stephen, you're talking about the DF. Okay. So as we began, okay, we began with reassigning. Okay, we assigned our data. So this is our data, the employee attrition. Okay, so we assign our employee attrition to a variable called DF. So what this does is that the data set is now embedded, or yes, so let me put it that way. It's now inside a container called DF. And that container, anytime you want to access the data set, we just call that container, which is called DF. And the DF will produce or to show us our data set. Okay, you get it? Steven?
Yes, I got it.
Okay, yes.
And please, before you go on, okay, can you just
Yeah.
Okay, just hold on.
Okay.
Okay, like now you have a df dot group by, you open brackets, salary, and in parentheses again, another bracket, it is a square bracket now, dot count,
Yes.
you open brackets again.
Okay.
At what point do we play with all those brackets and insert probably those words and before can now run?
Okay. All right. Okay. So thank you for the question. So with the square brackets and the parentheses, they are different. Okay. So they are different based on what you are doing. So this will take us back to something we call data structures. Okay. So you see, for data structure, anytime you want to access or you want to index something, we use the square brackets. So let's say, for instance, we have a list of numbers, that is 1, 2, 3, or let me say a list of people. Let's say Obed, maybe Stephen, then maybe Amma, right? So if you want to access something in a list or in a data frame, we always use the square bracket. Okay, so we say A. Now we want to index something in A. So we want to index what? Obed. And we know that Python starts counting from 0. So Obed is index number 0. We just print out what? 0. So this means that we are indexing this item, the 0 item, in the list. Okay, then we run. So this will give us what? Obed. So the square bracket is just to index a particular item. But if you have, maybe if you want to index multiple columns, we use the double, the double square bracket. That would be, we want to index. So now let's use our data frame. Okay, you want to index, the first one is what? Employee ID. Employee ID. Now we also want to index salary. Okay, ID, capital D. Right. So with this, it means that we are trying to index double, or we want to index more than one item. So that will bring us what? Two square brackets. But if you want to index only one, we just use one square bracket. Please, you get it?
Yes, I understand.
Okay. Now, looking at the one with the parentheses, okay. So for the parentheses, it means that this is called a method. Okay, so you see that in some cases there are some, it didn't have any parentheses, like for instance, the shape. The shape didn't have any parentheses. This is called an attribute. So this is an attribute of the data frame df. But in a case whereby you want to perform some method or you want to perform some function on the data frame, we use the parentheses. Like for instance, sum. Okay, the sum, for instance, means that it's going to perform some operation on the column. So let's say, for instance, I want to find the sum of employee ID. Okay, the sum of employee ID, to go and sum up everything. So from 1 to the last employee ID, to sum them up. That is when we use the square bracket and the parentheses. So the difference again is that the one without parentheses are attributes. They are attributes to the data frame. But the ones with the parentheses, they are just methods. So you are trying to perform some operations on the particular data frame or the particular object that you are dealing with. Please, you get it?
Yes, I do. Thank you.
Yes, you're welcome. Please, any other question? Mensa, your hand has been up. Okay. All right, so we can look at the last thing before we end the meeting. So let's look at, so let's say, for instance, we are done with all this analysis and we want to save, now we want to save the data set based on what we have done. We have taken out the missing value, we have taken out everything. So what you can do is, I'm going to call pandas again, pd dot save, right? So we say to CSV, okay? I want to save to CSV. What do you want to save to CSV? So maybe you can just give it a name. You can call it employee attrition 1. Okay. Okay, so now we're done. Okay. Save underscore CSV. Oops, what's happening? Yeah. Just a second. All right. So save pd dot to save to CSV. Hey, who is that? Hello. Do you mind? Hello. Okay. Second. So to CSV, right? To why is this not working? So save underscore to CSV, right? So it should save, but it seems like the mode, I'm trying to miss out the code, then please forgive me for that. To CSV, right? Oops. Okay. Seems I'm missing out the code, but as at this point, please, do we have any question? Please, do we have any questions at this point? Okay, so I can see there are some comments. Okay. Okay, so thank you from Ishola. So thank you for the lecture. I'm a beginner and I want to start data science. How do I go about this and what is your advice for me? So Ishola, so my advice for you as a beginner, as I'm also a beginner, what I do is that I take up online courses. I go to, so some of the online courses I take, I make use of LinkedIn Learning and also some free courses on Udemy. There are some free courses out there. You can also take up YouTube videos and follow suit. But my advice is that make sure you always work on projects. keep on practicing whatever you are learning. Then, if possible, you can draft a timetable that maybe at the end of this day, I want to achieve at least data structure. I want to understand data structure. I want to understand visualization. I want to understand how to create a model or anything that you want to do, but make sure that you are following suit. Okay, make sure that you're having a timetable that which will guide you to achieve what you want to do. Okay, yeah, please, any other question?
Hello, Beth.
Yeah, hello.
While you are talking about VS Code, you're also mentioning Python and Jupyter. I don't know, because sometimes I see Python is on its own, Jupyter is on its own. Are they embedded in this VS Code?
Please come again.
I said, while you are taking us through this VS Code,
Yeah.
at some point you also mentioned Jupyter. You also mentioned Python. So I don't know whether they are separate app on their own, or they are also incorporated inside this VS Code or VS app.
Okay, all right. So for the Jupyter that I mentioned, so the Jupyter is an extension. Okay, it's an extension in VS Code, right? But Jupyter Notebook also has its own application. Okay, Jupyter Notebook has its own application which comes with Anaconda. But for VS Code, in order for you to use the Jupyter Notebook, you have to go and download it from the extension store in VS Code. Okay, so I can share that with you. Let me share my screen again so that you understand what I'm saying. Yes. Okay, so now the extension here. Okay, so if you want to get the Jupyter Notebook extension, you just have to search for the Jupyter. Okay, search for Jupyter Notebook. To take some time depending on your network. Okay, so if you search for the Jupyter Notebook, you see the first one here. So you click on the first one, then you install it. Then this one will give you the Jupyter interface. So this is the Jupyter interface. This is the Jupyter interface. Okay, so this is a Jupyter interface. But if you also want to run Python codes in Jupyter, you also have to download the Python extension. The Python extension as well. The first one you can see from Microsoft is verified. They come and install it over here. So you see the install button, then you just click on it, then to install for you. Yeah, hello, Steven.
Yes,
hope you get
thank
it
you.
now. Yes.
Yes, I do.
Okay. Yeah, please, any other question?
Please, are we
Hi.
supposed to, or this VS app, can it work offline, or we must be online while using it?
Okay, so the VS Code, it works offline. It works offline, yeah. Yes.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Please, any other question?
Hi, Obed.
Hi.
Yeah, my question is, for someone who's a beginner in the tech industry, can
Yeah.
you also apply for the Microsoft Learn Student Ambassador program?
Yes, you can also apply for the Microsoft Learn Student Ambassador program. The Microsoft Learn Student Ambassador program gives you the avenue for you to learn. Okay, so it has a platform called Microsoft Learn, whereby you will learn any programming language of your choice. That is Python, the JavaScript, or any other language that you want to learn. So you just have to have an interest or have a passion for Microsoft technologies, then you'll be good to go. Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Yes. You're welcome. Please, any other question?
Obed, are we
Yes.
going to get
Yeah.
the video of the work after the class? Like just to check
Okay.
again.
All right. Sure. So
Right?
I'll try and share that with you
All right, thank you.
via email. Yeah. Please, any other question?
Good evening.
Good evening.
Please, I want to know how long does it take someone, or can it take someone to become an expert in data science?
So with that, with that question, I would say it varies. Okay, it varies. Okay, so it depends on the person. It depends on the person and the time that you allocate to studying the data science. Okay, maybe for someone,
So
if yes, so let's say you are someone who dedicates, let's say, at least 5 hours every day to learn something about data science. Maybe it can take
5
you even less
hours.
than 3 months. Yeah, so I'm just creating a scenario. Okay.
Yeah, I get it. But I see 5
Yeah, so
hours to be too much,
it will be too
isn't
much.
it?
Okay, so yeah, so let's be realistic here. So let's say you dedicate 2 hours every blessed day to learn something about Python, to learn something about data science. It may even take you less than 5 months to get the whole concept of data science, even though you're not able to learn everything, but you have a deeper understanding of how data science works, like the libraries, the sklearn, the pandas, the matplots, name them. So it's all about dedication. Then you having passion for what you're learning, then you'll be good to go.
Okay.
Hope that answers your question. Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Right.
Later on, can I get you one-on-one, like maybe inbox you or something, and then for us to talk more?
Yeah. All right. Sure. You can. So you can reach out to me on LinkedIn. My name is Obed Asante. Yeah, Obed Asante. You can reach out to me on
Okay.
LinkedIn. Yes. So I'll drop my LinkedIn URL in the chat so you can reach out. Okay. Yeah, Eugene.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Is it a problem with consistency? How do we deal with it? Okay.
Probably
Okay.
his network is down.
Okay.
That
Network.
consistency issue is also.
Obed.
Hey.
Obed.
Hello.
Yeah, the problem with consistency.
Yeah.
How do you
Hello.
suggest I? Yes.
Yeah. Please. I missed your question. Can you come again?
Yeah, I'm saying there's something about consistency that's very, very hard. So
Yeah.
let's say I am consistent for like 2 weeks or a month. And I don't feel like I should do this thing again. What's your advice for me?
So my advice for you is that you just have to make sure that like you don't overburden yourself. Yes, that's the thing. Like that is what always cause we not being consistent with what we are doing. Don't overburden yourself. Just be realistic. Okay. So don't go and
Okay.
start a goal. Yeah. So don't go and start a goal that every day I want to learn 3 hours. Like I want to learn Python for 3 hours, of which you know that sometimes there are some obstacles that may come your way, maybe meetings, assignments, like as you are students, right? So just be realistic. So if it is 30 minutes or 1 hour that you can do, just stick to it, right? But don't overburden yourself. That is what causes that. Okay. Yes, then also
Okay.
then the other thing is that don't overburden yourself with too much tasks. That's I want to do this every day. No. Maybe if it is 2 things that you want to do a day, that you know that you can do it, just go for the 2. But if you think that it's